Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have breaking news coming from around the world, as we have been able to hear that firefights have continued throughout the night in between Afghanistan and Pakistan, with Pakistani armed forces now conducting a counterattack into Afghanistan territory, capturing 19 border outposts through the night and causing significant casualties, at least according to Pakistani claims. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China is no longer looking for any communications with the United States of America about the upcoming trade war and has denied several phone calls while also stating that they are completely ready for the upcoming trade war. This is also coming as the China Coast Guard continues to harass Filipino fishing vessels near to the area of the Spratly Islands and further south than that towards Riau Islands. We were able to see that one vessel ended up colliding with a Filipino fisherman today, causing some minor damage to the vessel and continuing to harass the sovereign actions and economic interests of the Republic of the Philippines. Outside of that, the United States of America and Israel are continuing to wait for the release of the hostages from the Gaza Strip. While we've been able to hear about the potential release of hostages from the Gaza Strip, we have also seen that firefights have now resumed within the areas of control that the Israelis have left, as it appears that Hamas forces and some form of an unknown militia are now engaging in significant firefights throughout the uncontrolled areas. This also comes simultaneously as Hamas is stating that they will no longer govern or operate the Gaza Strip, although everywhere the Israelis have left, Gaza is already, well, generally Hamas is already reappearing. NATO is currently keeping an eye on a significant number of Russian Kilo-class submarines that are inside the Mediterranean, while at the same time, the Russian Federation is taking extreme economic measures over the course of the day, ending the fuel bumper, which is the subsidization of the prices of fuel inside the Russian Federation, while at the same time continuing to threaten the Greater West and the United States of America about the potential provision of Tomahawk cruise missiles to the state of Ukraine. This also comes as the Institute for the Study of War has stated that it appears that war is largely imminent at this point and may not be avoidable. We have a huge amount of news to cover over just the past 12 hours alone, and we're going to be making sure to get you all into each and every single little detail. Starting us off in Afghanistan and Pakistan, we have been able to hear that over the course of the night, the situation has changed heavily. As many of y'all will know, yesterday was the beginning of the actual major ground operations by both sides, with Afghanistan conducting attacks into Pakistan, also raiding across the border, taking over some areas of small areas of Pakistan along the border, and they were able to take around 7 to 8 Pakistani prisoners before they retreated back across the border. Today, the Pakistanis have returned this in kind, and we have been able to see that more airstrikes are continuing to be conducted by the Pakistani Air Force, including this one that was pictured inside of Kandahar, while simultaneously, we're also seeing the arrival of a fairly large sort of a change, at least in the border situation. The Pakistanis have been able to get almost complete control of the situation overnight, it appears, and have been able to be physically seen in picture and video evidence within outposts and facilities that are used by the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan for border security reasons. This is actually a border checkpoint that the Afghans once operated that now appears to be under the direct control of the Pakistani army. This is not the only instance of such. We have been able to see further up and near to the area of the border crossing at Peshawar, there was another captured border checkpoint with another Pakistani military member taking a picture in front of a Taliban flag directly along the wall. It is quite clear, at least from these pictures, that the Pakistanis have taken a large control of the situation overnight, and while the initial Taliban attacks were significant, they were apparently quickly repelled, and the Pakistanis are now conducting offensive counterattacks into Pakistani border regions. This is something that has also been corroborated by the Pakistani Ministry of Defense, as they have stated that over the course of the night, 19 border checkpoints and outposts have been taken over by the Pakistani armed forces directly, and that they are currently in possession of these outposts. We've also seen that these outposts are being supported by artillery fire, as the Pakistanis are now using artillery, almost in a direct fire form, to continue to fire at possible Taliban positions near to the border checkpoints, and to continue to hold them for some period of time. We can actually see one of these artillery pieces firing inside of this clip here. We can hear the artillery commander give the fire order, the gun was fired, and the round is on its way towards what is believed to be a Taliban outpost on top of that mountain. It does appear that the Pakistanis generally do control the situation at this moment, and that the Afghans may have wildly over-exaggerated their abilities. We also were able to see continued strikes on Afghan targets. And unfortunately, I can't show any of these clips here, but you can find them. Link in the description below to this map, and you'll be able to look at all of these for yourself. We have heard that the Pakistanis are trying to generally not speak to the Afghans about any sort of a ceasefire arrangement, as the Afghans have now approached the Pakistani government around 4 times since the end of their hostilities yesterday for ceasefire talks, and we're now hearing that Pakistan is rejecting all ceasefire requests from the Afghans, generally showing that the Pakistanis are now viewing this as a full-on border war and are not willing to end it until they believe that they've either saved enough face or achieved their objectives at cutting down the Taliban to size, most likely by just inflicting decent losses onto them near to the area of the border. On top of that, we have also been able to hear the first estimated casualty reports from both sides, as the Taliban has claimed that they killed 58 Pakistani soldiers in the border clashes overnight. This was then countered by the Pakistanis, reporting that they had only lost 23 soldiers during the evening clashes, and that is 23 killed, not 23 wounded and killed. And then the Pakistanis retorted and claimed that they had actually killed 200 Afghan Taliban soldiers in the area of the border overnight. Regardless, the situation is quite severe, and whether we were to take any casualty report as a face value report, this situation has broiled wildly out of control since it first started really about a year ago. To give you all a little bit of a synopsis, if you haven't heard about this yet, as to why this is going on, there's a group of people that live within the border region of Pakistan and Afghanistan in the south that are called the Balochistan people. The Balochistan people are a group of people that are ethnically and culturally different than the majority Pakistani and Afghan cultures that you will find in both countries. They actually operate a terrorist group inside of Pakistan called the Balochistan Independence Movement, and the Pakistanis have been trying to deal with them heavily and destroy them. In some instances, however, these terrorist forces will cross the border into Afghanistan to try and escape the Pakistanis' wrath, and as a result of that, with the Pakistanis trying to chase these guys down across the border, they'll sometimes get into firefights with the Taliban, which are trying to defend their borders. This has apparently escalated to the point that both sides are now viewing it as a full-blown border war, generally over border security interests, which is what we're seeing right now. We have no clue how much longer this could last. This could go on to last for several weeks at this point, but nevertheless, this is a major armed engagement nonetheless, without a doubt at this point. Moving on from that, the People's Republic of China has also made statements showing that the trade war with the United States of America will be continuing, as the People's Republic of China has declined a phone call after export control announcements were made on rare earth metals. We've also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has stated that they are not afraid of a trade war with the United States. This has come after the People's Republic of China has issued a letter regulating the export of rare earth metals either from the People's Republic of China or from nations that are large consumers of rare earth metals that are exported from the People's Republic of China. Many have believed, including the President of the United States, that this is some sort of an attempt or an effort to try and monopolize the rare earth metals market and to create an artificial global shortage within the Western sphere. This would give China some form of leverage in the short term economically and strategically, and this is something that the United States has now announced a retaliatory 100% tariff on as a result of that action that was made today. Still, it does appear that the People's Republic of China is not willing to relent at the moment and may be using this as some form of leverage to get some element of trade or economic incentives to be able to lift up this sort of a obstacle or a hurdle for the Western world is the best way to put it. Or they may be looking to try and secure their position for an upcoming war in Taiwan by depriving Western nations, including the United States of America, of rare earth metals that are usually used in a large amount of electronic components. While the Chinese are trying to deprive the West of electronic components, we were able to see that the Chinese, using those brand new electronic components, have been able to develop a brand new aircraft. And I would like to show y'all this one right here. This is actually filmed by a Chinese citizen today within one of the abandoned cities that are generally built as a real estate project. And it did give us a very good glimpse into the future of Chinese aviation projects. It appears that it is a brand new flying car. We're not really sure how they're going to be able to use that on the front lines, but it is quite evident that this vehicle still has some control issues to be put out. It appears to have been flying sideways through the air when this video was filmed, and generally from what we've been able to hear by experts, cars generally aren't supposed to fly sideways through the air. Still, we'll be trying to keep apprised on this and make sure to give you all any updates on the specifications, the abilities, the thrust-to-weight ratio, or the armaments that this sort of flying car can carry, as it does appear that the People's Liberation Army may want to take this and run with it, or I guess, pun intended, fly with it, you know? Anyways, moving on out of the People's Republic of China's internal situations about the upcoming trade war, we've also seen that the People's Republic of China has returned to pretty severe harassments of the Filipino Coast Guard as well as Filipino fishermen that are within the area. We were able to see that the Chinese Coast Guard near to the Thitu Island in the South China Sea has conducted another escalatory action against the Philippines by using one of their Coast Guard vessels to ram and alter the vessel's path. This is, of course, wildly aggressive. We do not really see any responses made by the Philippines or the greater Western world to these sorts of provocations, but they are quite large nonetheless, and we can once again see that in this clip right here. We can see the Chinese Coast Guard vessel directly impacting the back of the ship, and pretty much in a sense pitting it as much as a ship can be. We hear the siren continuing to blare from the Chinese Coast Guard vessel as it now begins to move on by. And we also were able to see another video of them spraying down the vessel with water cannons from the China Coast Guard vessel. They're continuing to spray the vessel with a water cannon.
30 meters.
And this all happened, by the way, down near the area of the Thitu Island, which, if you do not know, is around this general area right around here. So it does not appear that the People's Republic of China is stopping their nine-dotted line territorial ambitions anytime soon, and are generally trying to lay claim to the entirety of the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea, the Spratly Islands, and multiple other key locations within this area. This is an extension of Mao Zedong's nine-dotted line, which was created about 80 years ago by a guy who really didn't know what the borders of the area looked like. As you can see right here, these red lines are the literal nine-dotted lines meant that Mao Zedong drew on a map saying that China owns those waters. Why do they own those waters? No reason in particular. They just happen to own them. That's at least according to Mao Zedong. You know, don't take my word for it, take his word for it. But nevertheless, the Chinese are trying to exert influence on areas that clearly would violate the territorial waters at a minimum of every other country within the region. That includes Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, and the Philippines, just to count a few, also including Taiwan. That is quite a large amount of territorial water that China is trying to violate. And of course, this continues to keep rising tensions ongoing within the area with China and Vietnam, China and Brunei, China and Malaysia, and China and the Philippines. And this is just an extension of that continued escalation that's been going on for years at this point within the area. In the meantime, the Israelis have been continuing to wait for the release of hostages from the Gaza Strip, as the Vice President of the United States has stated, according to NBC News, that the Israeli hostages will be released from Gaza any moment now. We are still waiting for the release of the hostages, and we have been able to hear that the situation is deteriorating heavily inside the Gaza Strip, at least within non-Israeli controlled areas, as armed clashes have broken out between Hamas and armed clans and militias in Gaza following the ceasefire, generally showing that there's some sort of a lack of any sort of legal control within the Gaza Strip right now in the uncontrolled areas, and it's pretty much descending into a state of anarchy between Hamas and whoever else is now emerging from the rubble at this point inside the Strip. However, Hamas did reaffirm to the AFP that they will not govern Gaza after the war, although they're getting in armed firefights with militias that are attempting to exert control over the Gaza Strip, suggesting that Hamas is still positioning itself to largely be in control of the Gaza Strip after the conflict. One other thing that I do want to point out to y'all is that the Hamas position has been, for quite a while now, that they do not govern the Gaza Strip. This is nothing new. They've actually said this for years, that they do not govern the Gaza Strip and they're just some group. So it is a bit of a non-statement to say that they will not govern the Gaza Strip after the war. The real proof will be in the fact that they do not act as a de facto government in the Gaza Strip after the conflict. Before the Israelis even invaded the Gaza Strip, there was a civilian government inside of Gaza, but it was never really anything more than ceremonial because Hamas actually ran the Strip. So while that quote-unquote civilian government ran the Gaza Strip, it was actually Hamas that was really running everything out on the street, and this might end up being a similar situation once all of this is over with. While that's all going on, Netanyahu also stated that Israel's enemies are trying to recover in order to attack again, and added that Israel is on it. So we do not know exactly who he's talking about. That could be Hezbollah, Hamas, that could be the Houthis, that could be Iran. We really do not know what exactly that was directed towards, but it does appear that the Israelis are quote-unquote on it. So we'll have to see what exactly that means here in the future, and what exactly the Israelis are going to do in response to any actions that would be conducted by their enemies that are apparently planning to attack them once again. Generally, I would highly doubt that it would be Hamas or Hezbollah. Hezbollah's gone into hiding after a large amount of their leaders and forces were killed over the prior years. Hamas is just, literally crawling out of the rubble in the Gaza Strip right now. The Houthis really can't do much of anything, and the Islamic Republic of Iran is really the only country or any group within the area that actually could do something. So if the Israelis are making that comment about anyone, we would highly expect that it would most likely be against Iran if we were to take an assumption at that, and we'll have to wait and see if that assumption ends up becoming true. Nevertheless, NATO is also continuing to monitor multiple Russian submarines, particularly that of the Kilo-class submarines that have been seen inside the Mediterranean, and are currently telling them right now with surface ships, which are making sure to keep an eye on them. This has all come about a week or two after a Russian Kilo-class submarine surfaced near to the area of the Strait of Gibraltar with a major engine malfunction. It was apparently leaking fuel directly into the crew compartment and required a Russian tugboat to be able to grab it and then drag it all the way back up to the area of Kronstadt Harbor up near St. Petersburg. We do not know the fate of that submarine, as a matter of fact, folks, just in case you were wondering. We heard that it was tied up and being pulled away, and that was the very last thing that we heard about it. We haven't heard anything about it since, and there's actually folks on Twitter like Anton Gerashenko who are currently looking to see exactly what happened to that submarine because they don't know, we don't know. We just heard that it was tied up and then pulled away, but nobody's ever heard of what the fate of that submarine was, whether it made it back to Kronstadt, whether they had to abandon ship, whether it ended up going adrift, or whether some members of the crew died from suffocation from the fumes. We have absolutely no clue, folks. So unfortunately, we cannot give you all an update on that story, but it does appear that we're continuing to trail other similar submarines within the Mediterranean. The Russian Federation has also been going through economic dire straits at this point, as a presidential decree has come out today inside the Russian Federation, which is now announcing the end to Russia's fuel buffer. Many of y'all will know that fuel prices in most countries around the world are subsidized by a national government. Here in the United States, U.S. Commercial fuel prices for consumers like you and me are actually regulated or generally subsidized to some degree by the U.S. government, and that is to try and keep the prices relatively stable. Inside the Russian Federation, there is an incredibly similar sort of a process, and as of today, they've completely removed that. The reasoning behind that, from what we can tell, is that the Russian Federation's government just does not have the ability anymore financially to be able to subsidize the gas to try and keep it at lower prices. This means that Russia's gas prices from here forward are going to directly represent the availability and limited supply of fuel relative to the extremely high demand, meaning that from this point on forward, we may see that the prices will start to rapidly skyrocket. We have also heard inside the Russian Federation's government, according to Dmitry Peskov, aka the Rat, the Rat has stated this as the following: "The issue of Tomahawks is a matter of extreme concern for us. Putin has already spoken about this. This is a special weapon. It can have a non-nuclear or a nuclear configuration. Recall the reports from our special services a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, based on information that the Ukrainians could create a so-called dirty bomb. So imagine a long-range missile takes off and is flying, and we know it could have a nuclear payload. However, it cannot change the state of affairs on the front lines." So basically, the statement said, this is a really big deal, and we're terrified of the Tomahawk. However, we're not really scared of the Tomahawk because we can deal with it easily. It's one or the other. They can either deal with it easily or they can't. The truth is that they can't deal with it easily. This missile would be able to make it really anywhere inside the Russian Federation to hit just about anything. The Russians don't want you to know that, so they're still going to try and downplay it and make it sound like it's not that big of a deal. but it is quite a big of a deal, at least for them. This missile, well, most Tomahawk missiles have a range of somewhere in between 1,500 miles to 1,200 miles, meaning that practically the entirety of western Russia up to the Ural Mountains is well within range of almost every variant of the Tomahawk. That also means that every single key target within the country could be hit for the large part, and that also means that the Russian Federation would be seeing 10 times more damage being caused per successful strike than they're currently seeing with the Ukrainian Leoudi drones, which carry about a 50-pound warhead or a 100-pound warhead on some variants. The Institute for the Study of War is also saying that war is appearing a lot closer to happening now than generally ever, as according to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia is already preparing for war with NATO, and they strike sooner than intelligence agencies expect. The US-based Institute for the Study of War reports that the Russians have entered what is called a Phase Zero, the stage of preparation for a potential confrontation with the NATO alliance. This includes espionage, sabotage, and unidentified drone flights over military bases and strategic facilities across Europe. The ISW notes that Russia is building up its reserves and developing new tactics for warfare without relying on massive armored forces. They're pretty much moving away from the Soviet-era armored doctrines and moving on into a more modern, flexible doctrine. According to experts, the Kremlin is already gaining significant experience in modern warfare and could launch new aggression without waiting for its army to fully recover from the war in Ukraine. It does appear that the Institute for the Study of War, and many, including ourselves here on the channel, are saying that the situation is about as bad as it can get in Europe as far as the potential inevitability of a conflict starting. Hopefully we'll be able to see that the NATO alliance will stand united against this threat and to stand it down in such a strong and significant degree that it would make the Russians think twice or think about it enough that they would decide not to go through with a major war with NATO, as it will not end well for the Russians, but still, the West will have to pay a price to be able to deal with the Russians and their aggression, not only against the alliance, but against our peoples as a whole. But nevertheless, that is all of the major news that we have for today. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching, and if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We would absolutely love to have y'all here. We put out short war videos as much as we can whenever we have enough news in the middle of the day to be able to put one out, and every single night except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we are running nightly news streams covering every single major world news event that happened over a 24-hour period. Please make sure to also, if you really enjoy the channel, support us on Patreon, because for the price of a cup of coffee every single month, about $5, and that's adjusting for inflation, folks, you can help this channel to keep on rolling. And that is an absolutely incredible thing, and a huge shout out to the folks who are out there on Patreon who are supporting us right now, because you help us to be able to keep the gears turning here at Enforcer HQ, helping us to keep the lights on, helping us to pay our bills, and helping us to eat, making this our full-time job where we can focus on news coverage every single day for each and every single one of y'all. And so a massive thanks to everyone who's been enjoying this channel on this video so far, and for years as a matter of fact, and we thank you all once again for watching another Enforcer Breaking News video. And with that, folks, of course, we will always see you in the next one.